Is this new, or are we just talking about it more?
It's a good question. I think certainly I think misogyny has existed for time, you know, for all of time probably. It's very difficult to work out whether there's more of it or if we're just more aware of it. What I would say is certainly that people like Andrew Tate and his ilk have certainly made it more mainstream, and more an acceptable kind of face of misogyny.
Interesting. And I know that you go round the country talking to pupils, I imagine boys and girls, but particularly targeted at boys, about toxic masculinity. What are some of the worst things that you have heard or indeed directly seen?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I just need to say that there are many boys who are very emotionally intelligent, just very good people. However, you know, on my journey up and down the country, I have met boys who are, for example, defending things like rape, or who very obviously regard their female romantic friends as property, or you know, I've even heard boys advocate that it should be legal to hit women. So you know, those cases are rare, but they do occur. I think the biggest worry for me, I think, is just the more insidious kind of casual misogyny that runs through much of the school day in many schools.
Yeah, I mean, the casual misogyny, that's the insidious aspect, isn't it, which is very difficult to tackle. I'd have thought, though, with the more overt examples that you were describing there, particularly boys advocating that you know, that they should be allowed, they should be permitted to hit women. These are things that I thought the Online Safety Act was designed to remove in terms of their encouragement online.
Well, that's not happening. I mean, a recent piece of research showed that these social media sites, on average, it's just 23 minutes before the algorithms recommend content that is misogynistic in nature. And this is regardless of whether the boy on this social media site has actively searched for misogynistic content. So the algorithms of some very popular social media sites are actively pushing misogynistic content towards boys.
Yeah, but that is something that social media companies need to be protecting against. I know there's a big black box around what the algorithms are and what they do, but they're supposed to be preventing that from happening, aren't they?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, they should be doing a lot more. And well, unfortunately, they're not doing a lot more, and so it falls upon teachers and parents to help ensure that our boys and our girls, to some extent, are able to view these kind of sites critically and with a more cynical eye, I guess.
Um, the word misogyny in itself, I mean, we're having the conversation and right-minded people will think that's a bad thing, right? We need to prevent that happening. I'm wondering if it's now become, amongst these pockets of people that fall into the manosphere, as it's known, whether it becomes a badge of honour, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think Andrew Tate's on record as actually saying that he's absolutely a misogynist, and Andrew Tate's kind of he's the acceptable face of the manosphere. When you look at some of these incel websites, the almost certainly there are incels or people who identify as such who are very openly misogynistic, very proud of their misogyny, but also very troubled and very confused individuals.
So how can you help here? I mean, what do you advise teachers, schools, parents, teenagers? I mean, give us something to hang on to that is hopeful.
Yeah, I think one of the things we need to do is we need to really connect with boys. When we look at, for example, the profile of an incel, in actual fact, incels have quite significantly higher rates of depression and anxiety, and even suicidal ideation compared to the rest of the population. And so what we need to do is we really need to think about, how can we connect with our young boys? When people like Andrew Tate are telling them that society doesn't care what they have to think, that society no longer cares about masculinity, that society wants to destroy masculinity, how can we actually show our boys that no, we do care about what they have to say? We do want to understand their viewpoints. And how can we really make them feel included? How can we make them feel a part of this society so that when they face romantic rejection or humiliation or loneliness, that instead of going to these darker spaces of the internet, or instead of paying money to people who will tell them they can solve all their problems, how can we make them come to us rather than them? And I really think that honest, frank discussion and listening to boys and getting them to think critically, critical thinking, asking them questions about everything, and just the fact that we'll be willing to engage with them and discuss these sorts of issues with them, I think goes a long way.
Has the release of adolescence been helpful for your mission? Because as a mother of two teenage boys, I know that when I've said, we must sit down and watch this together, they roll their eyes because they think that that's what all parents are telling their children now, and it's what the government is saying schools must be showing children. I'm just wondering whether it's good because it starts a conversation, but ultimately does it achieve anything?
I think you've nailed it there. I think it really has shone a light on an issue. I do think this idea, however, that boys are spending an hour or two in their bedroom alone, and then they're going to leave that bedroom with the intent and desire to commit horrific violence upon women, just like that, is slightly misguided. I do think there's an element of panic. That's not to say, though, that when somebody who has been radicalized or by misogyny, if someone does choose to enact violence against women, then it is going to be catastrophic. So it is an issue we need to be aware of. But yeah, I don't think we have to. We don't have to worry that all our boys are these violent monsters just yet, because in my experience with talking with boys, that's not the case. The best thing we can do with adolescence is learn from it, and I think the greatest message that the show delivers is this one of connection and connecting with our boys, and making sure that they're not spending all hours God send on their own in their rooms, where they could be accessing or at least being exposed to misogynistic content.